I notified the Prime Minister that I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement.
I really hope the NDP stays focused on how we can deliver for Canadians.
And now, sellout Singh has pulled a stunt.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has eliminated, destroyed, torn up, ripped up, ended the confidence and supply agreement with Liberal Party leader and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So, does this mean that an election is being called tomorrow? Maybe immediately? Probably not. I'll get to all that though. But this, I'm going to get to what this means. The hilarious reactions from all three leaders. All three very hard to listen to, but I will play what I can before my ears explode. But this is the quick breakdown here before I get to the first clip from Jagmeet Singh announcing the ending of the agreement. So from CBC, the confidence supply agreement struck between the two parties in March 2022, committed, which is an important date that I'll bring up later for reasons, committed the NDP to supporting the Liberal government on confidence votes in exchange for legislative commitments on NDP priorities. So I'll get to some of what that was after the Jagmeet Singh clip. But under the agreement, the Liberals essentially could govern as if they had a majority government. So this allowed them to avoid any sort of election for the past couple of years. And it was supposed to last until June 2025. Also, in terms of the election, Canada's fixed election law dictates that a vote will happen in October 2025, but that date is moot if a majority of MPs turn on the Liberals or if Trudeau goes to the Governor-General to request an early election. So I was reading some commentary here from people that would know better than I do. Laurie Turnbull, as a professor of political science, is speculating that it will likely see a budget election, but it could happen before. Anybody could decide to put up a no confidence vote and then see where the chips fall. But usually, the party's going to decide if the Conservatives or the NDP would decide to do it. The NDP are not in a position right now in terms of just money raised to really be in an election. Even still, if it happened next year, they're still not going to be able to compete with the Conservatives and the Liberals. But we will see. I don't want to speculate too heavily here because I don't know when an election will be called, but almost certainly, I shouldn't say that. It seems likely it's going to be called before October 2025 when the election is going to happen regardless. So let me get to Jagmeet Singh's announcement here. It's pretty short, so I'll just play it all.
Today, I notified the Prime Minister that I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement. Canadians are fighting a battle for the future of the middle class. Justin Trudeau has proven again and again he will always cave to corporate greed. The Liberals have let people down. They don't deserve another chance. There is an even bigger battle ahead. The threat of Pierre Poilievre and conservative cuts from workers, from retirees, from young people, from patients, from families. He will cut in order to give more to big corporations and wealthy CEOs. The fact is, the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. They cannot be the change. They cannot restore the hope. They cannot stop the Conservatives. But we can. In the next federal election, Canadians will choose between Pierre Poilievre's callous cuts or hope. Hope that when we stand united, we win. That Canada's middle class will once again thrive together. In Canada, we take care of our neighbors. That's who we are. I've embraced that value my whole life. I'm running for Prime Minister because together we can and will stop conservative cuts. We can deliver relief and restore hope, fix healthcare, build homes you can afford, stop price gouging. It's always impossible until it isn't. It can't be done until someone does it. If we're together, nothing is impossible. And we won't let them tell us it can't be done. Big corporations and wealthy CEOs have had their government. It's the people's time.
Look, I think the message is fine. I think he is right to do this. I also think it's kind of late. The NDP have sort of given the ground to the Conservatives. Pierre Poilievre has gone out there and talked a big game, fooling a lot of people, working class people, that he's going to be the one to work for them, despite the fact that Pierre Poilievre has been in government his entire career, and that entire career has been working on behalf of massive corporations. Yet he's talking about, oh, cost of housing is too much. Yet he's meeting with wealthy real estate executives that are giving to his campaign. Like, the Pierre Poilievre is so incredibly fake, but we've gotten to a point now where I don't want to say it's too late, but we are deep in the process of the NDP already losing a lot of the support that they could have had this happened a little earlier, had they been really driving home a real message, a national message in a way that, honestly, I guess would require a lot more money that they simply don't have. So I think it's time for Jagmeet Singh to step down. The party needs a new leader. It needs a new voice. I think Matthew Green is the right choice for that, but that's a whole different discussion because there's no leadership race. So here we are. But in terms of the three parties, look, if you're in a riding where the NDP can win, absolutely vote for the NDP. The issue is they're not in a lot of ridings where they can win, at least not right now. So in terms of, so I'll get to, again, Trudeau's reaction and Pierre Poilievre as well. But just in terms of the agreement, so they did deliver on some key promises. So dental care benefits, one-time rental supplements for low-income tenants, and a temporary doubling of the GST rebate. But some were not yet fully realized, as CBC says. Pharmacare legislation hasn't passed the Senate, and a bill to implement Elections Act changes is still before the House. A promised Safe Long-Term Care Act has also yet to be tabled. So it's the only... What kind of bothered me about this entire thing is that they aren't just honest, or I should say Jagmeet Singh isn't just honest about what this whole thing was about. It was about avoiding a conservative government. Like, this agreement, I think, was the right choice at the time to avoid a conservative government. And now we're in a place where it's even more likely that a conservative government is going to form or an election called. So things haven't really gone in the right direction. Now, NDP Labour critic Matthew Green said the NDP has been reevaluating the deal since Labour Minister Steve McKinnon directed the Canada Industrial Relations Board to impose binding arbitration. So that's this story here. I think this is, whether this is true or not, I guess this is true. That's what they're saying, but, politicians. But this is a good thing to point to because this was a clearly anti-labor move by the Liberal government. So to use this as sort of the jumping off point for the decision is good. It's interesting that Jagmeet Singh didn't mention that. You think if it was the jumping off point for this, that it would be brought up here. Again, I think it's important to just be a little more natural. And I know this, I've been busy, watching American politics, seeing Tim Walz, who is a real person. There's very few. I shouldn't say. Okay, there's politicians like that in Canada. They're not in positions of leadership. So at least not right now. Which again, Trudeau should be replaced. Jagmeet Singh should be replaced. I think other people could do much better jobs in those positions. Trudeau has sort of worn out his welcome at this point. They're marching themselves into a conservative government. With Trudeau there, even if he's not there, it's not going to guarantee that they're going to avoid that. But there would be a better chance at doing something than just like walking themselves into an obvious loss. But again, that's how things currently stand. Once the campaigns get going, things can change because I'm going to get to the Pierre Poilievre clip, and oh my goodness, it is terrible. So first, before I get to the Pierre Poilievre clip, the people have not seen enough of Pierre Poilievre, which is why I think his numbers are so high, because once they see more of him, things may change. But here's Trudeau reacting to the news, and I'm going to cut this up a bit. This is like 3 minutes long, so I'll just put in whatever is important into this clip.
Prime Minister Trudeau, you no longer have the support of the NDP. Your party is trailing in the polls, and the Conservatives are calling for an election. Is it time to send Canadians to the polls?
We're here today because we're delivering on school lunches and school food for thousands of kids across the province, and we're making investments that are going to be helping hundreds of thousands of kids across the country as people step up. These are the kinds of things that Canadians are looking for. As I traveled across the country this summer, People talk to me about making ends meet. They talk to me about the high cost of rent and the need for more housing. They talk to me about the environment and climate change and the impacts of it. And these are the things that we're focused on. I'll let others focus on politics, but I will point out that I really hope the NDP stays focused on how we can deliver for Canadians, as we have over the past years, rather than focusing on politics.
All right, so he really doesn't get too deep into his reaction to the ending of the agreement. He stays on message, which Trudeau tends to do. But, you know, he goes on to discuss the things they have accomplished, including dental care for seniors and the process right now that's going through to ensure that more people have access to pharmacare. Brings up the school lunches, which he's there to announce, at least in Newfoundland and Labrador, which, look, if you're going to feed my kid a lunch at school, I am more likely to vote for you. I can tell you that. The $10 daycare had a direct impact on my life. So these are things that work in the Liberals' favor, but it doesn't appear in the polling, at least not right now, because people largely are feeling unhappy with the situation, and it's not necessarily because of the Liberal Party. I'm going to get to, and again, I'm someone who, if I can vote NDP over Liberal, I will. But that doesn't mean that everything wrong right now is because of the Liberals. There is a global problem, whether it's inflation, the cost of everything is up, and that isn't just inflation, that's greedflation, that's massive corporations taking advantage of the situation that's been going on for a few years. Inflation's gotten a little better since then, and their profits still going up, interestingly enough. So a lot of the issues on corporations, but then you could turn around and say, yes, and who's in charge of those corporations? Who can regulate those corporations? The government. So while I just argued, and you can't argue, that none of this is a direct cause of what the Liberals have done, as Pierre Poilievre is trying to indicate, because Trudeau invested into communities, that's why people can't afford anything, because that blew up inflation, it's crazy. No, there was a global issue with inflation. It's not a Canadian issue. The issue is that there isn't enough being done to tamp down on corporate profits. That's the issue. And the idea that Pierre Poilievre of the corporate party, the complete corporate party, the Conservative Party, would do anything about that is hilarious. That isn't to say the Liberals are all for the worker, because they are not. They try to put forward a balance. That balance tends to favor capitalism, largely, but they're closer to helping people than the Conservatives ever have. Now, this gets to Pierre Poilievre. This clip, okay, this is, how long is this? 2 minutes, 33 seconds. You know what? I think I'll play all of this, because I need you to suffer through this to understand just how unbearable this man is. Don't you dare speed the clip up. Make sure it's on normal speed. You're going to watch this whole damn thing and suffer through this with everybody else.
Sellout Singh betrayed the workers who thought he would stand up for them. Instead, he has stood up for Trudeau, allowing Trudeau to double our debt and cause the worst inflation in 40 years. A third of Canadians now say they consider leaving Canada. 2 million line up at food banks. 2/3 of kids, young people, and families who don't own homes believe they never will in Canada. We never imagined that it would be so bad that hospitals would have coolers full of dead bodies because family members can't afford burials or cremations. But that's what Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, Sellout Singh, have delivered. And then on food prices, well, food prices, I think we've got a CBC, oh my goodness, CBC's microphone has fallen down. What do you know? Who would have thought that I'd be holding on to the CBC logo here today? I'll give that to you. I don't know if that... everything is broken in Canada after 9 years of the NDP Liberals, including the CBC microphone. And now Sellout Singh has pulled a stunt. The Sellout Singh stunt today, where he came out and claimed that he was wrong, that the coalition was a bad, costly idea, but he refuses to commit to voting for a carbon tax election. So my message to Sellout Singh is this: if you're serious about ending your costly carbon tax coalition with Trudeau, then commit today to voting for a carbon tax election at the earliest confidence vote in the House of Commons. That way we can have a carbon tax election where Canadians will decide between the costly coalition of Trudeau and Sellout Singh that tax your food, punish your work, take your money, double your housing costs, and unleash crime and drugs on your street, or common sense conservatives who will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
Oh my God. The Canada's fallen apart. The Liberals and the NDP are running on unleash the crime on the streets, please. That's our campaign slogan. Unleash the crime, unleash the drugs. Okay. At least try to be normal. My favorite part, before I get to combating any of the BS that came out of this guy's mouth, my favorite part was when the CBC microphone fell and it completely threw him off. Like he had to like, you saw like in real time him try to reconstitute himself and get back on message. Oh yeah, sell out Singh. What's this, Donald Trump now? We're doing names? So unbelievably embarrassing and very hard to listen to. If you sat through that at 1.0 speed, you're a hero, because even though I told you to, I sped through it. I'm sorry. I could not take it. But let me address some of the insanity. He's very concerned about people and just helping people. That's why he meets with the real people, the corporate lobbyists flocking to his campaign in the Cash for Access fundraisers. More than 100 active or recent corporate lobbyists have attended the Conservative Party's Cash for Access fundraisers since Pierre Poilievre became leader. The real people, like the lobbyists for oil and natural resource companies, big banks, telecoms, large retailers, and real estate investors paid for entry to private Cash for Access fundraisers with a Poilievre held across the country. The real Canadians, that's what he's concerned about. He's shown his entire life that he votes with the real people, the lobbyists for all these companies. Look at his career as a Conservative MP, his entire life. While he in the past has complained about career politicians, he is actually a career politician, and one that has worked on behalf of corporations and against the working class and against labor. That is simply a fact. But he cares about the cost of housing. That's why he's meeting with the real people, big real estate executives that are among his top donors. It's so absurd. So let's just address some of this garbage. The record inflation not seen in 40 years. Notice how he doesn't compare it to other countries. Because if he had to do that, so this was at the height of it, right? This is, what year is this? Here we go. November 2022. So, in the thick of it, maybe just coming off of it a little bit. But this is Canada compared to others. Canada sitting at 6.9. And meanwhile, look at the list here. It was a it's not like Trudeau took over and, oh my God, everything's more expensive because Trudeau. No, maybe there was a global pandemic. Maybe that had an impact on the world. And then maybe massive companies took advantage of the situation. So looking at the inflation rate, that's come down. And the reason I pointed out March earlier, when the agreement between the NDP and the Liberals were signed, March 2022, is because, sure, it went up a little bit since then. And then it went completely down. But Pierre Poilievre wants you to think, no, as soon as they signed that agreement, everything went to hell. Everything got more expensive. Nothing's affordable now, which is true. Nothing's ever affordable. But it's not as if it was because of that agreement or the Liberals. It was just the issue with massive corporations and the global pandemic that was going on. So this is a piece that I'll link to below from johnhoward.ca. They're replying to a Globe article that apparently is putting all the blame on of crime on the Liberals. But they say here, no mention of poverty or homelessness or COVID, identifying only one factor that caused the change, the election of the Liberals in 2015. This Yeah, this even though the trend started in 2013 while the Conservatives were in power. So the violent crime reports here, you could see it began to rise a bit in 2013, dipped off a bit. That's probably the beginning of the pandemic when everyone's home, and then started to raise a little bit coming out of the pandemic. So this is, again, just trying to use fear to scare people into supporting the Conservatives, which is, I've seen it work in the US. I hope people in Canada are smarter, but I guess we'll see when the election starts. And worth mentioning here, as it turns out, in 2021, about 40% of the increase in violent crime over the last year was accounted for by one category, level 1 sexual assault, which is where there is no physical harm to the victim, such as unwanted touching. Incidences of more serious assault actually declined. The second largest contributing factor was uttering threats. And in 2022, the largest increase was extortion. So a little more here. So so this is from Stats Canada. They use what is called the crime severity index, as a lot of crimes are thrown into the violent category, even though they aren't physically violent crimes. So there is the crime severity index, which actually categorizes it a little more accurately. So the crime severity index has been approximately stable over the last 8 to 10 years and actually went down in 2020 and 2021. So this is during the Liberals being in power. There really hasn't been much of an impact. And there's more there. So again, I'll link that below if you want to dive deeper into that data. But I think it should be obvious. Pierre Poilievre's attempted to use crime as a fear mechanism. Also worth mentioning here, this was announced today. Bank of Canada delivers third straight interest rate cut, bringing policy rate down to 4.25%. So again, this idea that things are getting even more expensive, not true as the data bears out. You could argue, and I think it's very fair to argue, that companies are not paying enough. Profits are king above everything else, and it's been that way for a while, and it continues to be that way. And there is a place for government in that. Part of government's job in that would be to support unions, support labor. That is the real mechanism in which people have power against the greed of massive corporations, is union power. When you do things like the Liberals did, that I showed you earlier, Federal Labor Board orders rail workers back to work. That doesn't help the ability for workers to fight for their rights. Also worth mentioning, the carbon price, the carbon tax. He's so focused on this. This idea that everything is because of the carbon tax, all our problems are because of the carbon tax, is so insane. So this is from Policy Options. Again, all my sources linked below the video. Feel free to go through it yourself. The latest data, we find that gradually increasing indirect taxes, including carbon taxes, have caused overall consumer prices to be only 0.6% higher in October 2023 than they were in January 2015. This indicates that nearly all the overall price increase in 2021 through 2023 are due to other factors. Similarly, recent declines in inflation are primarily due to falling energy prices. Also, the government rebates roughly 90% of the revenue raised through the climate action incentive payment. So most families receive more in rebates than they pay in carbon taxes. Pierre Poilievre just understands that the word tax is scary. And that's what he's doing this. That's why he's doing this. This is the whole angle here. Using Stats Canada's latest data, we estimate that the median annual net cost of carbon taxes for households in Ontario in 2023 was negative, around negative $300, meaning that most households received $300 more in rebates than they paid in carbon taxes. Carbon tax is not the problem. But that's the agreement. That's the news on the agreement. I tend to think election early next year seems the most likely, at least based on what I read you and what I'm reading. But I guess we're going to wait and see.